Good evening, Norfolk residents, and welcome to the 2020 Candidates Night Forum, brought to you this year by us at NCTV. And we would like to thank the Norfolk Community League for giving us the honor of hosting this year, and we look forward to getting back to normal next year. With us virtually tonight are Christopher Weeder, Select Board incumbent, Anita Mecklenburg, Select Board candidate, Paul Terrio, Constable incumbent, Elizabeth Lehan, Housing Authority incumbent, James Lehan, King Philip School Committee candidate, Jennifer Oliver, Library Trustee candidate, Shannon Meneses, Norfolk School Committee candidate, Chad Peck, Planning Board incumbent, and Mark Edwards, Recreation Commission incumbent. So thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you all for your willingness to serve our town. And before we get too far into our program this evening, let's go over the rules for tonight. They are as follows. There's no back and forth between candidates, only answering the questions posed. There'll be a 3-minute intro for non-contested races, a 5-minute intro for the contested race, which is the select board only. All questions will be posed to all candidates for a particular board or position, not to a specific candidate. Yes, so we have many questions. Over 70 questions, I believe, were submitted, but we only have 2 hours. So we're not going to get to every question, but our goal is to hear as many as we can, of course. So, like I said, we're going to have the opening statements from our candidates, and so we're going to hear from them now. We're going to start a little out of order tonight. We're going to start with Shannon Meneses. Shannon has a conflicting work commitment, but wanted to listen in and participate as well. So we're going to hear first from Shannon. And here she is.
Yes, thank you so much, Andrew, and hello, everybody. As Andrew mentioned, my name is Shannon Frederick Meneses, and I'm running for Norfolk School Committee, and I'm very honored for this opportunity. In thinking about it and speaking to the town and what I wanted to do and why I wanted to run, I've spent my entire career producing children's educational media and technology. And my goal in that was trying to reach and help all types of learners and educators, not just students. And as a producer, I feel like I'm a highly effective communicator, possess strong organizational skills, and I'm a true leader. And I've had in-depth experience working with a wide range of people, both personally and professionally, clients, colleagues, but more importantly, and what I feel is a strong reason I'm running for this is I've worked hand in hand with teachers, administrators, students across the country in my professional career to help shape and fulfill their educational needs personally, but also at a classroom, school, and district level. And I also feel my background and professional experience will make me a strong voice and an advocate for the community and our educational system. I have a real passion for not only the educational technology I produce, but also once we hand that off, how it affects and how it impacts students and educators. And not only am I running for professional reasons, but in my personal life too, because I'm a parent. I'm a parent of 2 children in this school district. My daughter will be moving on to 2nd grade, and my son will be starting kindergarten, which is crazy at HOD in the fall, whatever that might look like. But like every other parent, and I'm sure all of you, I want to ensure quality education, not just for my children, but for all children, socially and academically. I was also fortunate to serve as a parent representative with Anita on the HOD School Council from 2017 to 2019. And I really want to further my involvement. I truly loved that experience, and I want to further my involvement in the community by running for the Norfolk School Committee. I think my passion, my education, my creativity and strategic thinking will hopefully make me a unique member and be able to bring a great deal to the committee and to the community. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Shannon.
Sure.
Similarly, Shannon's running mate, Sarah Ward, was not able to attend the meeting tonight, but she did submit a brief statement, which I will now read. All right. Hi, my name is Sarah Ward, and I am running for a spot on the school committee. As a lifelong Norfolk resident and a graduate of the H. Olive Day and Freeman Kennedy schools, I know how great the Norfolk school system is, and I am dedicated to keeping that tradition alive. I understand the economic climate we are facing and feel that I am prepared to use the financial knowledge I gained in previous work experience as well as my current position as the Associate Director of the Norfolk Public Library to navigate the future needs the school district will face. Thank you for your consideration as you cast your vote. So that was Sarah Ward. All right, so now let's get back to our ballot order, and so we will start we will welcome Chris Weeder for his opening statement. Chris.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you to NCTV for hosting this and to all the other candidates who are volunteering for positions. It's good to see a lot of people trying to get involved in the community. Currently, I serve on the Select Board, finishing up the one-year term of Jeff Palumbo, and I'm seeking the 3-year seat. I've lived in Norfolk for 23 years and worked in Norfolk for 28 years. I'm currently the general manager of Aqua Barriers Commercial Roofing Company. I also serve as the town zoning board of appeals chairman, which I've held for the last 2 years, and served on the zoning board for the last 10 years. I'm also been on the Norfolk Zoning Commission and also on the Norfolk Animal Inspector. I think we've this last year, the board has done a very good job of really digging deep into our budgets. A lot of people have had a great deal of concerns about spending, and I think I've spearheaded trying to get to a zero-based budget and really trying to look at what our costs are to run Norfolk and how we can do a better job at it. I think I've also done a very good job of looking at contracts, looking at the way we hire people, how we pay people. And I think I would like to continue that over the next 3 years, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Now, Anita.
Hi, I'm Anita Mecklenburg. Excuse me. I've lived in Norfolk for 26 years with my family here. I know I want to talk about why I want to run, but I think I want to tell you a little bit about who I am because I'm a new candidate to the pool. And so I was thinking a lot about it, and I think I wanted to tell a story that when we were little, my dad was a teacher, my mom took care of us, and we used to go camping all the time in the summer because we could in the summer. We didn't have a ton of money, so we didn't stay at motels, so we would drive and camp and drive and camp and drive and camp. And every time when we were done, I loved it as a kid. As an adult, I think, oh my God, my mother cooked all those meals on the campsite. How hard that must be. But when we left every campsite, everything's packed up in the car, ready to go. And my dad said, now we have to clean it up because we leave it cleaner than we found it. And so I was raised, you leave it cleaner than you found it. You do the work. In the days of John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you. And so that is sort of at my core belief of doing your best job, you leave it. And my girls still today would say, Mom, but we clean it up, we leave it cleaner than we found it. I was raised in Chicago. I'm a Hawkeye, go Hawkeyes. At the University of Iowa, I fell in love with football, and my husband, we are going to be married 35 years this month. And I used to commute. I'm a teacher, and we moved out to the East Coast. I commuted from Quincy I'm going fast because I'm worried about the time, Andrew. We commuted from Quincy I was teaching in Franklin, and I started driving through Norfolk, and I just told my husband, this is the town, when we can afford it, this is the town where I want to live. It has this cute little school, and the police station is so cute, and people wait their turn. It used to be a stop sign, and everybody waits their turn, and it has like farmers and a commuter rail, and like this is the best place that I want to live here. And when after 9 years, we had saved enough money and we bought our 3-bedroom ranch here, and we've loved it ever since. I raised 2 daughters in this town. They've gone all the way through the school system, HOD, Freeman, well, it was Freeman Centennial at the time, King Philip Middle and King Philip High School. And both girls missed graduations this year, and so that's sad, but they are, I'm so proud of them. They're also really committed to making the world a better place. Excuse me. Professionally, I'm a teacher. At my heart, I'm a teacher. And I taught for 29 years. I got my administrative certification at some point because I really felt like we needed administrators who understood the job, like who really knew what teaching meant. And even though I got it, I still didn't go to a job because I was like having so much fun in the classroom. But eventually there was an opening in Norfolk, and I thought, oh, I'll put my toe in the water. And next thing you know, I'm the assistant principal at the lovely HLF Day School with the amazing Linda Balfour. And I'm also half-time curriculum director of ELA and social studies. And I have learned so much in that position. And just feel so grateful for having the opportunity to be part of that. On July 1st, I'm starting a new job. I'll be principal of the Winbrook School in Belmont, Massachusetts. And so I say that with excitement. And we were talking about the second grade parade earlier with a tear in my eye, because I'm very sad to leave the Norfolk schools. In Norfolk, I've served on school councils, like Shannon mentioned, all the way through what my kids went through. So at HOD, at Freeman, at King Philip, I've been on school councils, I've been on town committees. I go to town meeting, I voted every election, I pick up trash on Earth Day, but I was a working mom, and that was kind of the extent of my involvement in the town. And then kind of 2016 happened, and sort of had that really reflective moment where you feel like democracy is not a spectator sport, and it's time to participate. And so you start paying more attention and just saying, I need to notice what's going on. And so when I saw the select board opening, I thought, this is my opportunity to give back to my town and do the work that I want to do to help my town be the place that I continue to be proud of every day. And so I'm a mom, I'm a teacher, I'm a citizen. I love my town, I love my country. We camped through 44 states. I've been to 44 states and seen the beautiful diversity of this country. I'm not an expert in all things, but I'm a teacher. I know how to do homework, and I'm willing to do homework to learn things that I don't understand about. People who know me will tell you I'm good at listening with an open heart. Like, I'm not somebody who rushes to judgment. I listen with an open heart. I disagree with civility. I'll make responsible decisions for the town. And thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you, Anita. Next will be our incumbent constable, Paul Terrio. Paul?
I had to unmute myself. Sorry. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Norfolk Cable, and thank you for everybody for attending tonight's Zoom conference. My name is Paul Terrio. I live at 57 Rockwood Road. My wife and I have lived in the town since November 1983. We raised two daughters in Norfolk, went through the school system, and my oldest daughter currently resides back in Norfolk with her two children. I've been the town constable for the last, since the early 2000s. And I'm also the president of the Massachusetts Constables Association. And I think it's important for people to understand what the constable does, which is the primary reason I like to come on to candidates night. I know I'm not running as an incumbent, but nobody's running against me. And just wanted to explain what constables do. We primarily serve civil process. We work with a number of different courts. We work with the district court over in Rentham. We get papers out of the probate court in Canton. We serve papers out of the Superior Court. We do a lot of subpoena work. We do eviction work. And I work with a lot of attorneys in the surrounding towns. As the president of the Massachusetts Constables Association, our primary goal and focus is to educate constables on standards, training, education, and performing good service throughout the Commonwealth. Again, thank you for allowing me this time to speak to the town's people, and please consider me in your vote.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Up next, we have Elizabeth Lehan, Housing Authority incumbent.
Andrew and Katie and the Norfolk Cable Station for organizing the event. We're lucky to have you guys to document life in Norfolk. My name is Elizabeth Lehan, but most of you know me as Betty. I'm running for my third 5-year term of the Norfolk Housing Authority Board, and the Norfolk Housing Authority oversees the operations of the 2 low-income housing facilities here in Norfolk. One of them is for restricted age adults over 60 and adults under 60 with disabilities. The other is for families. The board is made up of 5 Norfolk residents who meet monthly. We oversee an executive director who manages these 2 facilities and reports to our board. While we oversee our housing authority, the state, as in the Department of Housing and Community Development, or DHCD, also oversees the Norfolk Housing Authority. DHCD writes the regulations that follow the laws passed by the legislature, which applies to all of the 240 housing authorities in this state. DHCD financially supports the housing authorities by both offering grants for maintenance, modernization, and offsetting rent to make it affordable to all its residents. DHCD gets its funding from state and federal taxes. HUD sets the regulations for income requirements for applications for housing. DHCD develops and oversees the waiting list of all state-aided housing authorities, while the local authorities will verify their eligibility. We hope that those who have a connection to Norfolk would be higher on the list. While both of these facilities have been around for a very long time, one for 45 years and the other for 30 years, they are counted into our inventory of affordable housing. Our town, along with most Massachusetts towns, are trying to get to the 10% of affordable housing that has been mandated by the state. So that is a very quick rundown of what we 5 members on the Norfolk Housing Authority do. While we oversee and make policy, we are in partnership with the state through DHCD. There are many rules and regulations that must be followed in the running of these residential facilities. My husband, Jim, and I moved to Norfolk in 1986 with our 4 kids. We have been active in town in many different ways, and I have enjoyed learning about this aspect of our town, especially knowing there is an affordability in housing sometimes when someone has lived here their whole lives and want to continue to live here, or they may work here or around Norfolk. And I appreciate your voting for me. And thank you again to the cable station.
All right, thank you. And up next, we have King Philip School Committee candidate, James Lehan. Oh, you're on mute. Yep.
No, wait.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Andrew, a special thanks to you and Katie for doing this and keeping this great tradition going. You guys are terrific and you do wonderful things for the town, so thank you for that. My wife and I, as you just heard, have lived in town for almost 35 years, and I won't repeat everything she said. She's better at it than me, but all 4 of our kids were raised here. They all attended the Norfolk and King Philip schools, which has been really exciting for both Betty and I, as that 2 of our daughters have moved back to Norfolk. And so we have 7 of our grandchildren that now live in town with us, and they also are attending the King Philip schools. And so we're proud grandparents. I've served the community on a number of boards, most recently as your selectman for 5 terms. But prior to that, I was on the King Philip School Committee for 6 years, as well as the Norfolk School Committee. Schools are my admitted passion. I don't think there's a greater cause that we can all serve than to help our children grow and receive a good education. When I decided to run for King Philip, little did I know that the world was going to change. What seemed like a reasonably normal year and a normal opportunity to contribute has turned into an enormous puzzle, one that we don't know where the pieces are or how even to put it together. So it's going to be a really intriguing year. We know that state aid is going to be cut at some point during the year. That's inevitable. This happened to us back in 2008. And we need to be prepared for that. But King Philip is very different than the Norfolk schools. King Philip is a town unto itself. It is self-sufficient. It is self-supporting. For example, here in Norfolk, the health insurance, liability coverages, things of that nature are all covered under the town budget. King Philip has to pay all of its expenses. They're also dependent on 4 independent sources for revenue. State, Norfolk, Plainville, and Rentham. Having worked with the King Philip budget as a selectman for the last 12 years, I know their budget pretty well. And it is a challenge. If anyone has ever tried to figure out the state formula on how these funds are appropriated by town, they're a better person than me. None of us have been able to figure out the magic formula at all. KP, not only are they responsible for their own costs, once that budget is set, they have no recourse to go any other way for funding. So their budget is really a delicate process. And when you have three diverse towns that may have different views on how to fund the school, it's always a challenge to bring some consistency to that. I know after working with school budgets and for a long time, there are varying opinions about funding of schools. They're always a hot topic. They take up, as Chris knows, they take up 67% of the town's budget, roughly 2/3 of the town's budget. So that's a high profile number. And the selectmen aren't left with a whole lot to manage when you consider the fixed costs that these folks have to manage their way through. So it is a challenge, but educating these kids is always a priority. Education is the key that opens up people's future. And we have an obligation that when these kids graduate, that when it's their turn to knock on the door, that door is not locked. All of us have had to contribute to that process. I'm a grandfather. I'm willing to pay my share to help the next generation get educated because those that were seniors when my children were in school did that for my kids. That's who we are as a community. We have to come together to do that. I know that it will be controversial as we go through this budget process because we know their dollars are going to be a little bit on the thin side. We don't know what the future holds with this pandemic. We don't know how we're going to work through the issues, but we will work through them because we don't have a choice. So we'll figure it out. Since retiring, I've been doing some consulting for the American Federation of Teachers. And I do this on pensions and even on occasion help them with their negotiations on the financial side. Yesterday, I participated in a town hall with several hundred teachers and administrators from Pittsburgh School District. When the town hall was over, the administrators and some of the teachers, the leadership of the group stayed on the line. And we got talking about the issues that face schools. And I've done this with several districts that I've worked with since this all happened, because no one person has the answers to this. We need the collective wisdom of all of the smart folks we can find to figure out how to work our way through this minefield. And I mean, how do you social distance on a school bus? How do you social distance in a classroom? Unlike the Freeman Kennedy schools, where the classrooms are a little bit on the smaller side, King Philip has classes in the 30s. How do you socially distance that? What do you do in the cafeteria? How do you deal with athletic programs when you're in locker rooms? I mean, these are all challenges that we're going to have to work our way through and find ways to do it. And there are a lot of fears surrounding this. But I have great confidence in the leadership. I have great confidence in my counterparts, hopefully, if I am elected on the school committee. And I think if we all work collectively together in a positive way, respect each other's differing views, do not create any type of divisive or contrary environment, but to work collaboratively and work together to find some common ground, we'll work our way through this. So I will give it my very best. I'll work as hard as I can to help our kids receive the education that they deserve. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, Katie, again, and Andrew, thank you for all you do. And I would appreciate your vote, and thank you for listening.
Right, thank you, Jim. Up next, we have library trustee candidate Jennifer Oliver.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. My name is Jennifer Oliver, and I'm running for library trustee. My husband and I have lived in Norfolk for about 8 years, and we have 2 children, Viola, who's 8, who is wrapping up 2nd grade, and Liliana, who is 5 and wrapping up her pre-K year at HOD. And growing up, my family was always very much about civic engagement and giving back to the communities in which we lived and worked. And so about 3.5 years ago, I was able to step away from my job and stay home with my youngest. And the library became a place that we just loved to go. Miss Sarah and Miss Marissa were 2 of the first non-family adults that my youngest would embrace and be excited to see and talk to without hiding behind my legs. So the library has always been that place that's been a safe place to go, a fun place to go, and a place where I'm pretty sure we've almost hit the limit of the number of books you're allowed to check out from the library as a family. We've gotten very close, I'm sure of it. For the past year, about 10 months, I was able to step in and with an appointment as fulfilling the last few months of a term. So I've been serving on the board of trustees for about the last 10 months and learning more about what the trustees do, helping with setting policies, working with the director to look at the budget and present a budget, give feedback on programs and services. The library really means to serve as an educational and cultural hub for the community, and I think we do a fabulous job of that. And as a trustee, I hope to continue to push the library to do better and better and do more things, even though we know that it's going to be a hard time ahead. So I just want to thank everyone for listening and joining us tonight, and I hope I have your vote.
Thank you, Jennifer. Up next, we have Planning Board incumbent Chad Peck.
Thank you, Andrew, Katie, and Norfolk TV. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chad Peck, and I proudly just completed my first term on the Planning Board. As such, I'm running as an incumbent for one of the 2 open positions on the Planning Board. I moved along with my family to Norfolk 3 years ago. For me, joining the Planning Board was a way to give back to this great community and be part of shaping the town for our next generation. I have a civil engineering degree from Purdue University, and I believe my knowledge in this field suits me well to be on the Planning Board. I want to represent this great community, and I hope I've earned your trust to continue to be on this board. Thank you.
Chad, and our last opening statement of the evening, Recreation Commission incumbent Mark Edwards.
Oh, sorry.
You're on mute, Mark.
There you go. I keep pushing it. It keeps not working on me. All right. Geez, how am I going to keep up with everybody who actually wrote things? I'm just going to wing it here. Thank you to everybody. My reasons for wanting to be back on the Recreation Commission are essentially the same reasons that I initially ran. As someone said earlier, 2016 told me that I needed to be more involved in the community I live in. So by training, I am a psychotherapist, multiple degrees. We won't go into that. And my main focus has always been on underserved populations. So my reason for being on the board is because there are so many children that I see who are in the underserved populations. Our Recreation Commission has, and don't get me wrong, they do a wonderful job, but their focus is on the things that you would expect them to be focused on: baseball and football, sports, and that kind of stuff. My oldest is on the autism spectrum, and those are things he's not interested in. And my experience with the schools, with the others, other parents like myself, is that those kids kind of fall between the cracks. And so I see it as my own personal job to find the ones who are falling between the cracks and do something for them. So the programs that I have introduced have been things like Anime Club, where we watch anime. What was the other program that I had? There was, in any case, it's the one that I'm working on right now. Is I would like to, well, I had planned to do, but then all of this hit, and my plan was to do a role-playing game group. The reason is psychologists for a long time have been saying this is just a fantastic opportunity for children to engage with others in a way that the social rules are already spelled out in black and white for them. So that was the reason that I ran initially, and that's what I'd like to continue doing. The thing that slows me down is, of course, that I'm doing them by myself. When I propose a new program, chances are you're going to find me running it. I think that's pretty much it. So thank you so much. I hope that I have your vote.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. And that concludes the opening statements. So now we're going to get right into the questions. And as you can imagine, we're going to start with the select board. So question number 1 for the evening is, given the amount of attention and focus put on this year's budget process, please talk about your thoughts on this year's planning and outcome, as well as how you would like to see the path change for next year's process. We'll start with the incumbent, Chris Weeder. Chris? Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
I think the process went well. I mean, there's, it's very difficult because the schools do a very good job of doing their budgets. They go very deep into their budgets. They almost, I think at the Norfolk level, they almost get to a zero-based budget and how they produce it. So I think they do a very good job. I think this year the board asked all the different departments to come before us, and we're looking for maybe a zero-based budget. We got a budget that wasn't zero-based, but they really did a good job of trying to explain what their costs are and what they need in FY21. In particular, the DPW did a fantastic job of looking at their costs, reallocating their costs for FY21. So I think the process this year really worked well, and it ended up in an 8-hour seminar up at Town Hall where a number of people participated. And I think it gave everybody, including myself, a chance to really understand better. I mean, for me, it was realizing that we have 5 DPW workers in the field. I think some of us think there's 10 or 15 out there. So when you suddenly start looking at the budgets and realize there's only 5 men working and the rest are managers, you really get an appreciation for that. I think we can continue to do better. I think if we move more towards a zero-based budget, I think we'll be better off where we really look at our costs. I think we have to start to think about regionalization. And I think especially because of this pandemic, that's going to become a necessity. So I think we've done a good job. I think we can do a better job. But I think this year's process really worked well, and I think I hope people appreciate it. I think what I heard out there was people wanted to understand where our money's spent. They wanted to understand our revenue, where it's coming from, and I think the board did a very good job of explaining that this year.
Okay, thank you, Anita.
Wasn't
You're on.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I was involved in the process a little bit from the school's point of view and from the board meetings that I watched. And I think in some regards that it went well because there was transparency about conversations. I think that the areas where it's always nice to have people have an opportunity to explain how they made their decisions or how they made their budget decisions, and so that people understand that. And so that I think is a strength of what happened. I think that conversation happened that in I guess it felt like sometimes that there was an assumption of a deficit model, like that people were doing something wrong and we're going to find it, instead of saying, let's look at this together and problem solve together and figure that out. I think it also ended up where there was less harmony between the advisory board and our select board. And I think that had we made sure that we are working in partnership with each other, that could have been a little bit better handled.
Okay, thank you. All right, next question also for the select board, and we'll start with Anita this time. The question is, Norfolk is a small town with a big town budget. How do we correct it? Anita? So
I don't love that question. We are a small town and we do have a budget, and I'm not, my neighbor asked me, he said, so Anita, you're gonna raise the taxes? And that is absolutely not my objective. But I think we need to look realistically at what services we get for our budget and then say, do we want these services? So do we like it when 911 comes? When we call 911, do we want somebody to come? Well, that costs money. Do we like to go to work the day after a snowstorm? Because to have somebody plow our roads, that costs money. So I think that we want to look intelligently at our budget and make sure that we're getting a good value for our money. We want to be making good decisions about that. And that's, no department in our town is perfect, but we have so much excellence in this town. We get a lot. I know in terms of the schools, we're paying for a Ford and we're driving a Lexus. And so it's hard to see people complain about how this goes. And so I don't want to raise the taxes, and that's not my objective, but I think we need to be realistic about the services that we're receiving for our town, the beautiful library we just heard about, and that our roads are being repaired. I just saw the thing they're repairing now along in Tucker. And so I think we get services for those. And if we want to reduce our budget, then we need to have honest conversations of maybe on Tuesdays and Thursdays when we call 911, Franklin will come. Do we want to wait that long, or do we really want to pay for those services? So I think that each of those decisions, it isn't arbitrary 10%. It's what services do we want in our town, and we can listen to our town and say what services do we want, and then decide what we want to pay for.
Thank you. Chris?
Andrew, can you repeat the question again?
Yes. Norfolk is a small town with a big town budget. How do we correct it?
Okay. Yep, here we go. I don't think we need correction. I think, and I don't think people are bothered by the dollar value of the budget. They just want to understand what value they're getting for their dollar. And I don't think it has anything to do with services. I don't hear people complaining about services. I don't see services cut. I think people just want to understand where the money's going. And as Jim pointed out earlier, 67% of our budget goes to the schools. And I don't think there's anybody in town who doesn't value education. I haven't run into anybody yet who says we should just start cutting school budgets. So I think, it's very difficult in a town where most of your expense is salary. And so it's really just getting the bang for your buck. And I think that's really what people are asking is, are we getting the bang for our buck? And please make sure that through transparency, we understand that. And, I don't think we're a big city budget. I think we are a small town. We provide a lot of services. We just got to be really smart because the costs will continue to go up. And that's the difficult part. At some point, there's going to be a crossroads where we're not going to be getting a great deal more revenues. And this year we're going to see that because of the pandemic. And that's where we have to be careful. We just have to make sure that we keep our expenses in check so that we don't get to a point where we're going into our reserves, we're going into our free cash, or God forbid, we'd ever have to do an override. Thank you, Andrew.
All right, thank you. The next question also for the select board here, and we'll start with Chris this time. The question is, what is the one town department that needs streamlining and operating budget that needs reduction, and how would you do it? I can repeat again if you need.
Nope, okay. I got it. I'll tell you, I think that's an unfair question because I would not say there's one department in town that needs streamlining. I think, and I think Jim could attest to this, is that as selectmen, we don't walk around and sit in every department. We don't follow them out in the streets. We don't go on inspections with them. We don't go to fires with them. We don't go on police calls with them. So to say that there's a department in town that needs streamlining and what is it and how would we do it, that would be very unfair. I think through the budget process and through working with the different departments, that's where we understand maybe where we can do streamlining. I think regionalization is probably one of the only things we're going to be able to do in the future to help with consolidation of costs. But I think it would be very unfair to say there's one department or one area in town that needs streamlining.
Okay, thank you. Anita?
I agree with Chris on this. I think we hire skilled people to run our departments and we trust them to do the work that they're doing. We ask for transparency and how they're making decisions and how they're spending their money. But I agree with Chris. I would be very reticent to arbitrarily say, oh, this department, because I think that would be uninformed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have some planning board questions. So I guess that's only going to be going to Chad Peck tonight. But this question is, with a future 10-year vision in mind, what do you think the town of Norfolk needs to focus on the most today in terms of development, planning, improvements, and changes?
Well, I think that's a really good question. I think some of the things we're already working on, I know there's a B1 committee that is working at trying to revise some of the regulations and rules in the downtown B1 district. They've been meeting for, I think it's well over a year now. So I would like to see the downtown grow and be expanded. I do think part of that is we need to work on becoming better or compliant with our 40B problem that we do have. We do have affordable housing problem, and I think the B1 committee has been working on that to try and incorporate some of those features into the downtown district. So those are the two things that I see we need to work on as a community.
Okay, thank you. Another question for you, Chad. What are your plans now and in the future to minimize negative impacts to the town of Norfolk related to large developments that impact our water resources, create dust, noise, and have long-term negative financial impacts to the town? So it says, I'm not interested in that there is little we can do to stop development. And so other municipalities in the Commonwealth can, why can't Norfolk? Does that make sense?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah,
I'm trying to understand the question.
I'll read it. What are your plans now and in the future to minimize negative impacts to the town of Norfolk related to large developments that impact our water resources, create dust, noise, and have long-term negative financial impacts to the town? Yeah, then it goes on to say, or it says, I am not interested in that there is little we can do to stop development. I'm not asking that. I'm asking about managing development better. Other municipalities in the Commonwealth can, why can't Norfolk?
So I'll be honest, I'm a little confused by the question. And so if whoever proposed that question, if they would like to reach out to me personally and we can talk about it. But I mean, so in general, I don't know. I'm sorry to say that. I don't. I'll be honest. I'm struggling to kind of understand the details of that question. But I do think if there are some developments that are of concern, that are in any way not meeting the codes of the town or following any of the planning board or zoning, then that needs to be brought to the board.
Okay, thank you. Another question for you. Planning boards can have developers as members. Do you see this combination as beneficial or as a conflict of interest?
So I personally feel that as extremely beneficial. I think that we have a diverse group on our planning board, and so we have enough of checks and balances. I am personally not a developer. I am a civil engineer by degree, and my offices aren't even in the state of Massachusetts. My offices are in Florida and Georgia. So, but we do have members of the board that are developers, and so I think by having the diverse group provides checks and balance. It is nice having those developers as part of our board because they bring expertise and insight into the planning board.
All right. And one more question for you, Chad, before we move on. It's, what do you see as the required skill set that the combined planning board should have, and which of these skills do you have?
So as far as a skill set, I think it's always good to have a board that is very diversified. As I mentioned earlier, we do have some developers. Myself as a civil engineer. I think on the board, we're all business professionals. So I think it's really good to have those people that are leaders not only in their community but leaders in their businesses. Whether they're currently active in their business, they may not be. They may be retired, but so a combination of just business leadership, some developer experience, and just general civil engineering knowledge helps a lot.
Okay, thank you. Next question is for King Philip School Committee candidate Jim Lehan. The question is, if elected, what specific actions would you take to ensure students of color entering HOD now don't have the same negative experiences during their time in the King Philip public school system as the students of color who spoke at the peaceful rallies for racial equality in Norfolk and Rentham? Jim?
Well, first, I want to compliment the community for holding the rally that they did. I thought it was extremely well done, and I think we showed who we are. I I'm not sure that, we're in such an awkward set of circumstances right now that people are very concerned. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of lack of understanding in how we work through this. In terms of the core issue, I will do everything I can to be sure that everyone, regardless of their color, race, nationality, it's irrelevant to me, that they are all treated equally at all times. We are all human beings. We are all equal. That is not something that is ever up for grabs for me. So we need to make sure that the policies are in place to enforce that. You need to make sure that there is some strength behind those policies. So when they are violated, if in fact they are violated, there are consequences to that. Dealing with kids, especially kids in high school, as they're growing up and beginning to mature, is always an interesting challenge. Children are a function of their upbringing. They're a function of the values that are taught to them at home. Schools can only try to influence that process as best they can. I'm not sure I'm giving an adequate answer because I don't know that I have an adequate answer other than it is a goal, it is a challenge, and I'll do everything I can to ensure that it occurs.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And we're going to get back now to the select board questions. I will start with Anita this time. And the question is, do you have any conflicts that might prevent you from seeking what's best for taxpayers? Anita.
So I think that probably stems, I'm muted, I'm unmuted there. I think that question might stem from, there was some conversation on Facebook about whether being a Norfolk, an employee of the schools would be a conflict on the select board. And certainly that's something that would need to be considered, but because I'm leaving the Norfolk Public Schools and I will be working for Belmont Public Schools, I do not think that that would be a conflict. I love the schools. I'm an educator. I told you I'm a teacher at my heart, but I believe that I love my town, and so I wouldn't put the schools above my town.
All right, thank you. Chris?
No, I don't have any conflicts that would prevent me from serving. Thank you.
Okay. Next question, we'll start with you, Chris. Norfolk appears to have the highest tax rate of surrounding towns. Why is that?
Want to answer that one?
Chris? One answer that one. Why do we have the highest tax rate?
Yeah, it's just, why is that? Yes, why do you think we have the highest tax rate of surrounding towns?
I think that's an odd question. We have the highest tax rate maybe of a few of the communities directly surrounding us, but we certainly don't have the highest tax rate in the state. And again, our tax rate is a function of our expenses and our revenues, and I think our property values. And so I think our tax rate reflects the property values in towns and the costs it takes to run this town. And so I don't think it's the highest. I think you have to, if you want to really review tax rates, you really have to look at the towns, what their tax rate is, what other items, what assessments are on top of their tax rate. I don't think you can just look at the tax rate alone. So no, I don't think we have the highest tax rate around. We do have a higher tax rate than a lot of the communities around here. And again, it's a function of our property values and a function of our costs to run the town.
Okay, Anita?
I would say that I don't believe we have the highest tax rate in the area, but I also believe it's a function, like Chris said, of the property values in the town, but also the fact that we're a small town and we do not have a whole bunch of business. We don't have a Rentham Outlet Mall. We don't have Patriot Place in our town to bring in those taxes to our community. So much of the tax burden falls onto our homeowners.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question, we'll start with you, Anita. Is it time to revamp pensions in employee contracts?
Oh, that's a little question. And so that question, revamp pensions in employee contracts.
Yes.
I don't know, that would require negotiations, and I don't see how pensions are bad value for our town. I actually haven't given that topic much consideration, so I'm going to say that I'm going to have to pass on that one, Andrew.
Okay. Chris?
Okay, I think I think we have started to look at contracts in towns. Uh, we have longevity clauses in a lot of our contracts for a number of years worked that you certainly don't see in private industry. And I think these are carryovers from long ago. And I think those are things we have to remove. I think a number of employees have car allowances, which I think is, most of us who drive to work don't get a car allowance to go to our job. So I think we have to look at those items. Uh, I think we have to look at a number, GPS devices has been something that's been suggested. So I think an ongoing process is revamping our contracts. I think we have to look at them. We have to look at what's happening out there in private industry. So our contracts are always in flux. And I think as we hire new people, yes, we have to continue to do a better job with our contracts. So we don't bind the town to 3-year contracts, maybe where they don't, or they're not necessary, or contracts where we don't need to have a contract. With regard to pensions, I'm not involved heavily in the pension system, and but again, I think you have to. I think as we move forward, and especially in light of what's happened in the last year, I think we have to look at all costs the towns incur, and from medical costs, pensions to contracts, and do a better job of just trying to balance those with the revenue we take in. I think that's what people want to see.
Okay, thank you. Now we have some questions for Mark Edwards from the Recreation Committee. This one is more like 3 questions, so so pay attention. But what is the mission of the Recreation Commission? What recreation expenses do funds from the town budget pay for, and how does the commission bring in other funding? Mark?
Well, first of all, I will say I am not the expert in this. That really is the person who actually does all the work, AM Proto. But from what I've been able to glean, let me see if I can answer these. So the first question was, I'm sorry.
What is the mission of the Recreation Commission?
The mission of the commission is just to approve or reject things that Anne wants done. So we are in control of the money that the commission, or that the recreation, that Norfolk Rec gets from all of its programs, and we decide where the money is spent.
Okay.
So ironically, we don't do very much.
All right. And what recreation expenses do funds from the town budget pay for?
Literally everything. And the fun part, I love to tell people this, we actually have no part of almost no part of the overall town budget. We fund ourselves almost entirely. All of our programs come from monies that we collect for other programs. There's a slight bit of Anne's salary and her part-time assistant, but other than that, we are completely independent of the Norfolk budget.
And the last question was, how does the commission bring in other funding? I think you said that, though, through
Yeah, we pretty much,
right.
The programs that we have bring the money, and that's the way we operate.
Okay, and one more question for you. How will you improve opportunities for passive recreation in town, such as open spaces or trails for walking, sidewalks, or bike lanes?
I know the answer to this one. We actually, one of our board members is on the committee, whose name escapes me at the top of the moment, but that committee is the one that takes new land and discusses how we can utilize it. And they report, that member of our committee reports to us so that we can look at, is there some way that the Recreation Commission can make use of that? If any of you have been keeping up with Norfolk stuff, there's the rail trail that we're working on, that this other committee is working on, but we're appraised of it. I can't say how far it's gotten because I don't understand it all, but there's some discussion of creating a long bike trail with 2 of the other towns that are attached to it on the north and south of us. I don't know how successful it's going to be, but that's the plan.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Mm-hmm. Next question is for Betty Lehan of the Housing Authority. The question is, the Housing Authority meeting agendas are posted for public access. What is the directive or mission of the Housing Authority, and who owns and maintains their properties and selects their staff? And how does the authority get funding? It's another three-parter, but I can read it again if you want.
I think I answered some of that in my first statement. I mean, obviously, the purpose is to have affordable housing in the town, and it is run, as I say, as a partnership between our board and the state, and is funded by the state and federal taxes. It is not funded by Norfolk taxes. So I don't know what the rest of the question was.
Who owns and maintains their properties and selects their staff?
Well, the town, I believe it was town land that these facilities were built on. And as far as selecting, we selected the director. We hired the director, and then she hires the maintenance and the secretary and so forth.
And the final question was, how does the authority get funding?
From the state and federal taxes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we're gonna get back to the select board here. This time we'll start, actually the rest of the questions are for the select board if I'm not mistaken. So we'll start with Chris this time. The question is, the governor committed Massachusetts to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. If elected, what specific actions will you take to help move Norfolk towards this goal? Chris?
Okay. Sorry about that. An unstable connection. I think the town is already working on that. I think our Energy Commission, is spearheading that. Andy Basanowski. I know we've become a green community, so therefore any new vehicles we're purchasing will have to meet certain requirements. Beyond that, I am not an expert in this field, and I don't think I would be qualified, other than to know that the Energy Commission is working on that through a number of initiatives, lighting at all our public buildings. And I think we just got a grant. We're going to actually spend some money, but we're going to get a grant for almost $150,000 for some energy conservation. And again, I know we've become a green community, so our vehicles that we purchase will have to meet that. But beyond that, I would not be qualified to expound upon that.
Okay, thank you. Anita?
First of all, that's a great goal, and I am excited about the green things that we've done in Norfolk so far. And one of the things as a select board member to know is like what's in your domain to do and what isn't. And so you would want to support the people who are doing those green things and support those things in town, but it isn't always the place of the select board to initiate the kinds of things. We want to support the people who are making those endeavors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question, we'll start with you, Anita. Let's see. How does your work experience make you the best candidate for this board?
Absolutely. So my work experience does make me a strong candidate for this board. I have one of the things when you're dealing with children, and now when I'm dealing with adults, is there's a high degree of unpredictability, and no day is the same. So I've encountered so many experiences, and you become very good at problem solving. And in the schools, you really problem solve for success. So when kids are having behavioral issues or teachers are having trouble, you're trying to find a solution that is a positive solution for everybody, where there's learning and growth and you're moving forward together. And so I feel like that ability to collaborate with all parties and that ability to problem solve, that experience, and the ability to stay to be calm in times that are stressful, and the ability to be respectful of people that you disagree with. I've been screamed at by parents and yelled at and all sorts of things, and to stay strong, calm, and stay focused on what we want is for the same thing that the parents want. We want what's best for that child. And so just really focusing on the problem. And so my ability to listen, my ability to problem solve, and my ability to be to end up with solutions where even if we disagree, we don't dislike each other, where we're talking about the problem and not talking about personal attacks about each other. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Chris?
Hopefully in the last year, I've shown that I have the skills necessary to be a good selectman. But I also, my degrees are in finance. I've run a commercial private corporation for the last 28 years. My zoning experience and my time on the zoning board is invaluable, as well as my interaction in the community. Being here for 24 years, I interact with a lot of the community and have over the years. So I think interacting with the community, having a good knowledge of zoning and our bylaws, having a background in finance, and also having done the job, I think those are the qualifications that I think make a good selectman.
All right, thank you. Next question, we'll start with Chris. What organizations, unions, and/or work-related organizations do you belong to?
I am a
Muted again.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay. I'm a licensed general contractor. I'm a licensed animal control officer. I have an undergraduate degree in finance, but I do not belong to any unions. Other than that, I don't belong to any, I'm not affiliated with any other organizations.
Okay. Anita?
Well, I was a proud member of the teachers union for 29 years, but then as an administrator, you're no longer a member of the union. I belong to the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development, Massachusetts Reading Association, and those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. The next one, we'll start with you, Anita. The question is, with the large influx of new families with children to the town, how will you prioritize support for the school district, including the preschool?
So you have to just listen carefully when the school presents their budgets and brings their needs to the town. You have to listen carefully and ask good questions, and a little bit, you have to trust the departments to do their work, right? It's not my job as a select board member to go into the schools and tell them how to do their job. And so when the school comes forward with their budget and expresses their needs, I have to listen carefully, ask good questions, and find the balance, because like we talked about, the school is a big part of the budget. And so how do we support these children in a way that we are meeting the needs of all of our students and yet still make a budget that's manageable for our town?
Okay, thank you. Chris?
I think it goes with working with the school. I know Dr. Alardi, I spent, I think, 3 or 4 hours with her this last year going through a budget. And it's very complicated. I mean, the special needs portion of the school budget is incredible to understand. It's always in flux, which makes it very difficult for a school district. But I think you have to rely, as Anita said, Dr. Alardi and her staff does an excellent job putting together a budget. And I think we just have to be able to understand it. We have to review it with them, and hopefully working with them, we come to a common goal of the best education for the dollars we can give everybody who is in town and who is coming into town.
Okay, thank you. Next question. On the select board, how will you work with, respect, and represent others even when they may have opposing views to your own? We'll start with Chris.
I think I would say that this last year has worked very well together. As I've said in the past, I think we've done a great job of communicating with each other. There's been an enormous amount of conversation on each and every item that comes before the board. And I think that's what you want to see. we have a rather large age group variation. I think there's 20 years between the youngest member, and I hate to admit that I'm probably the oldest member, which I never thought I'd have to say. But I think we've done a very good job of communicating with each other. I know Kevin says I'm extremely passionate, which I am, and sometimes my voice increases due to my passion. But I think yes, you have to. I don't think I've ever seen anybody yell on the board. But I think we've done a good job, and I think yes, you have to be respectful. We've learned that from prior boards and I think Norfolk is one town that you don't see people jumping up and throwing chairs or screaming and yelling. And I think the prior boards prior to this board has done a good job of civility, and I think this board also has done a good job of communicating and working with each other and recognizing the public.
Okay, thank you. Anita?
So I think part of being civil is, first of all, just having in your core values that all people deserve respect. So all members of our town deserve respect, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. And if that's in your core values, and then you're sure when you're talking about things where you may disagree that you're talking about the problem and not talking about the people. So you're talking about the issues, finding understanding, coming to a common understanding, asking questions so you understand, because sometimes people surprise you or they know things that you didn't think about before. And so being open to learning new things, being understanding that they're a person who deserves your respect, no matter what your opinions are about what they're bringing forward. And then being able to talk about the issues and not have it deteriorate into assumptions of guilt or assumptions of deception, or and just talk about the issues and have it be something that even if we end up disagreeing, that it didn't compromise the personal connections.
All right, thank you. Next question, we'll start with you, Anita. In your position on the Select Board, how will you support Norfolk schools and families as our educational institutions prepare to endure a difficult year ahead due to the coronavirus pandemic? And additionally, how do you feel students with disabilities are being impacted during this COVID-19 time? And how important is budgeting for SPED resources to you?
Okay, those are three questions,
Yeah.
so I might have to go back to you for that.
No problem.
And, so can you repeat the first part, just the first part?
Yes. In your position on the Select Board, how will you support Norfolk schools and families as our educational institutions prepare to endure a difficult year ahead due to the coronavirus?
So I think because of my intimate understanding of schools and how they work, I think I bring a unique knowledge base to the board about the responsibilities of the schools as well as the needs of the schools. And I think that will help me clarify things if there's questions, but it will also help me ask good questions as things come up. Can you read the second part?
Yes, it was additionally, how do you feel students with disabilities are being impacted during this COVID-19 time, and how important is budgeting for SPED resources to you?
So one of the beautiful things about the United States of America is we educate all children. Nobody is sent home, nobody is sent away. And so it's our responsibility to educate all of them. During COVID-19, our special educators have worked so hard to reach out, form those connections with kids, figure out how to do remote learning with kids who are autistic or kids who are nonverbal. And how do you do those kinds of things? And how do you include families and help these kids continue to grow, even though we're not together in the same room? So I feel like I am so proud of the work that our special educators have done throughout this remote learning. And I highly value special education. As an educator, here's where I'm going to say how much time do I have, Andrew, because I could go on a long time. Way back in the day, first it was called it was called mainstreaming, and I had a student with special needs. I'm going back sadly decades, but I had a student with special needs in my room, and it was a new idea because it used to be kids with special needs were sent somewhere else, and now they're included in the classroom. And I thought I was being so great. Wasn't it nice of me as a teacher to have this? And that young man taught my class so much, and I learned so clearly how the regular ed students were certainly role models for your special ed student, but your special ed student has so much to offer in terms of giving you a diverse classroom experience. And so they're critical to the success of our schools. Well, they have learning issues or different kinds of issues, they lift us up. And so I believe strongly in the importance of special education, and I feel like we're lucky in Norfolk to have the special educators that we have. And as far as budget, was there a budget one too there, Andrew?
Yes, and how important is budgeting for SPED resources? Yeah, how important are SPED resources to you?
Yeah, that's the hardest part, right? Like Chris alluded to earlier, when you have a student who moves into town with expensive needs, a student who is deaf, or a student who is nonverbal, or a student who is autistic, we need to respond to those needs, and the budget might have already gone through. So we have to figure out, how are we going to meet the needs of this child within the restrictions of our budget. One of the things that's coming forward at this town meeting is a contingency plan for our special ed, which would allow us to secure some monies into a fund that would allow us to respond to the needs of these kids that unexpectedly land on our doorsteps, so that we're continuing to meet the needs of those kids, but without saying, oh, we have to take money from here because we didn't anticipate this kid, and try to take money. Well, we'll take this away, or we'll cancel this subscription to try to meet these needs. So we're looking to have a contingency funds where there's a place where we can go if we have a student move in who's identified with needs that we did not anticipate, but yet we still want to meet that child's needs.
Okay, thank you. Chris.
All three parts?
Yep, I think that covers it. Chris, I can read it in parts for you too, if you'd like.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay.
I agree with everything. I agree with everything Anita said. No, I think one of the big concerns is that we don't know, and as Jim alluded to earlier, we don't know what the school is going to look like come September, and I think we're all worried about that. And I think looking at it, we're probably going to have to go into our free cash in November, and we may have to allocate more money to the schools in order to combat COVID and make sure that we keep proper PPP for all the students. And I think that's something we all have to be mindful. And I think the select board was mindful of it as we were preparing the budget, is because we don't know what the future will bring, and we have to be prepared for it and make sure we have, thank goodness we have good reserves, and we do have some free cash to accommodate for that. The good news is the state requires us to take care of special needs people, and that's great. And Norfolk has done a great job at that. And I think the article that's going to be on the Springtown meeting will help with that. Typically, there is always a place card for special needs in the budget for the schools, and then they give it back to us, and then again they budget for the following year. So the fact that will be able to set up a fund and keep, I think, up to $250,000 into it for special needs is fantastic. But again, this is state mandated; we have to do it, and so we have to be mindful as a community that it is a budget cost. And I never talk about it. I was born deaf in my right ear completely, and no one talked about it back when I was a kid. So I went through first grade, I went through second grade, and in the third grade, they told my father, he just doesn't get it. He's just one of those kids. And my father then had me tested, and they found out he can't hear. So down in my basement, for the next 4 years, every night on a green blackboard, my father would go through my lessons with me every single night. My math, my reading, anything I couldn't understand. Thank God my father was a very smart man, that he could actually teach me what I couldn't pick up in the classroom. And I think I always tell people, if you have an earache, think of what you hear and what you don't hear. And it's very difficult. And I happen to be one of those people. And I remember in college, people used to say, why do you sit in the front row? And I just like to sit in the front row. It was because can't hear. And so you have to really pick up on what you're missing. And so when I think about special needs, I try never to think about it, because I don't think I'm special needs. I was lucky. I had a father who picked up on it and was willing to work with me. But it is very sad, and it's tough. And I have a nephew who's special needs, and it bothers me only because I know what I went through and the difficulties I still go through. A lot of people say that I sound angry when I speak, or I'm loud. If anybody has a hard of hearing, they completely understand that. It has to do with that handicap. And that handicap follows you through school. And I was one of the fortunate ones. I was one who got the help I needed back when they didn't have special education and they didn't fund it and the schools didn't participate in it. So I think it's near and dear to my heart, but I try never. It's not a crutch for me, thank goodness. And but yes, we are very mindful of it. Thank goodness the state has recognized it. Our community has recognized it. Dr. Lardy is just she is so in tune with this. And when you start to hear about transportation costs that we have to do for special needs, you can't deny this. It has to be done. And I think the select board is very mindful of this as we move forward into this pandemic era, that we are going to probably see additional costs in order to educate our kids, whether it be in split sessions or I don't know what else we're going to have to do. But it's going to be a trying time for everybody, and I think we all have to work together on it. Our education of our kids is paramount, plain and simple.
All right, thank you. Next question, and we'll start with you, Chris. And I'm reading this as the question asker. I'm concerned about the continued building up of Noon Hill and the destruction of the scenic country roads there. What are your plans on protecting the land and the homeowners from developers?
Did you say Noon Hill or did they say Moon Hill?
Said Noon Hill.
Noon Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Chad can chime in, but I'm not aware of what's going on up in Noon Hill. Again, as the chairman of the ZBA, we have not had anything before us with regard to Noon Hill. I think if there's developments going on there, they've probably been approved by the planning board. So beyond that, I probably don't have, I couldn't add much more to that.
Okay. Yeah, true. Anita.
Oh, okay. So I would just say that we have boards in our town to manage those kinds of things. And so you would defer to the planning board to fulfill that responsibility.
Okay. All right. So next question, and we'll start with you, Anita. It is imperative to me that our elected town officials understand the magnitude of racial inequities that exist on the local level. How have you personally been involved in eradicating racism in your community? Kindly share your plan going forward for our town to stand hand in hand with Black Lives Matter. Anita.
Thank you. I love that question. And so I'm really passionate about this. And just in the recent news, the recent events in our town, like Jim said, I was so proud of our town. We parked at HLF Day and I was walking up the hill and I was coming to the crest and I please let their people be there. And I was so proud that our town came out and stood up for Black Lives Matter. In the schools, I have, in my own personal reading, I've done a lot of reading. I read Michelle Obama's book. I read a fiction book, The Hate U Give, that really helped me understand the sort of even though it was fiction, the sort of psychology of rioting or protesting. And I read White Fragility, which was very interesting. And then as a district, we are really leaning into that conversation. Beginning last summer, actually, the 4 districts of Norfolk, Plainville, Rentham, and King Philip we took a class on cultural diversity and the schools and really started that work with our own identity because it's personal, right? The thinking about race is very personal. We started with our own identity and ended up making position statements for each of our districts of how we are going to lean into this. And so the first thing is, like we've all spoken about here, is having kids feel safe in our schools, and not only safe, but have a sense of belonging. So they see themselves reflected back them in the school. So we aren't just reading books about white children or having stories with white protagonists, so that we're exposing our children to diverse cultures. One of the disadvantages that we have in the Norfolk Public Schools is that we are so white, right? We aren't giving kids a diverse experience in our district. So we have a heightened responsibility to have those diverse experiences through literature and through the experiences that we're having in our schools. And so I feel very passionately about it. We're looking at a 21-day course that we're going to go through with our staff. And I've encouraged Dr. Alardi, let's include our families in this, where you watch a video or read an article and then talk about that, because we all have learning to do. I've learned so much in the last 2 weeks, things that I didn't know about my own country's history that are shocking and shameful. And so I'm highly committed to working toward that cause as a person and as an educator and as a member of our community.
Thank you. Chris?
Andrew, could you repeat the question again?
Yes. It is imperative to me that our elected town officials understand the magnitude of racial inequities that exist on the local level. How have you personally been involved in eradicating racism in your community? Kindly share your plan going forward for our town to stand hand in hand with Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Andrew. I think we, again, it's been said here tonight before, no matter what color, creed you are, everybody should be treated equally. And I think we, sometimes we are not aware of that, and we have to be. We have to be aware of it in our schools. We have to be aware of it in our public. And I think it's just constant reminder that we just have to do a better job. I was fortunate enough, I grew up where we had the Metco program. So we never thought there was any difference. We had people from Boston coming out every day. And so they weren't, oh, look at those, they're different. They were just part of our schools. Running a business for 28 years, we've had a number of different people of color who work for us. So in my own personal life, they're just human beings. And so you don't look at anybody any differently. But I think obviously the last couple of weeks have brought to light that we have to be more cognizant of it. We have to work harder of it as a community and as a country to make sure that everybody's treated equally. And we're not every state is Minnesota, and I think that's the one thing that I think we can't look at every state and say we're just like what Minnesota did. I think Massachusetts does a pretty darn good job of recognizing different races and different colors. And but again, it's one of those things you just have to constantly be cognizant of. And I don't think there's anybody of color who wants special privilege. I think everybody wants to be treated fairly and equally. So I think it's just one of those we have to remind ourselves. And I think the last month has sort of just put a little tickler file out there for us all that we've got to do a better job of making sure that everybody is treated fairly.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll start with Chris. Franklin had a close to zero base budget for years and now just laid off 103 teachers. As we all know, good schools lead to better property values. What have you learned from Franklin, and what would you do differently for Norfolk?
Well, we're in Norfolk, and we're not in Franklin. And I think it's, again, very hard to judge what goes on in Franklin and try to apply them to Norfolk. And I could name examples of things that go on in Franklin that I think have caused them some of their problems, but I'm not going to. I think it's inappropriate. I think Norfolk is Norfolk. We have to focus on Norfolk. Franklin is a much different town, much different demographics. So I think it would be, I don't think it would be fair to try to apply the Franklin model to Norfolk.
Okay, thank you. Anita?
And would you read the question again, Andrew?
Yes. Franklin had a close to zero base budget for years and now just laid off 103 teachers. As we all know, good schools lead to better property values. What have you learned from Franklin, and what would you do differently for Norfolk?
So I taught in Franklin for 22 years. And so there's so many amazing teachers there, but the budget is always an issue there. I hope my husband's not listening to this, because you spend a lot of your own money when you're teaching in Franklin, because there just aren't the things available to you that you need. So if you need stuff, you go and you buy it, and you know the dollar store well because you've been there. And so Franklin has been a bare bones for a really, really long time. And I don't know how their town budget is handled and how those decisions are made, but schools cost money. So if you want a good school, you have to invest in it. And so we are in a situation in Norfolk where our population is growing and our budget is shrinking, and the population is growing and our budget is shrinking. And so people have to understand at some point there's only so much that we can do. Our population grows, our special needs population is growing, and our budget is shrinking. So if we want good schools, at some point it's going to cost us some money. It's unpopular to say it out loud, but Like, I can't go say, I want a new car, but I don't want to spend any money on it. So I think I should just get it. We aren't just going to get good schools. And our teachers are already working hard and already doing their part. And Dr. Alardi has a very lean budget. We are very frugal about our money. I've seen Linda Balfour drive to a store to pick it up because they're going to charge us $400 in shipping. That's crazy. And she gets her Bronco and she drives there because to save our town money. And so we have a frugal budget, and good schools cost money. And so we have to decide how much of our budget are we willing to do that. And that's the truth of it.
Okay, thank you. The next one is not so much a question, but a request, and it is to please explain your management style. We'll start with Anita.
Yes, I had to do this in a workshop one time. We had to pick an animal that represented our management style, and the animal I picked was a goose. Because when geese fly somewhere, they form a V, and they take turns being at the point. They trust each other to lead, and they listen, and they work together. And so my management style is very collaborative. My management style allows other people to be expert. I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. And my management style is that, they say if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so my management style is to go together and find that common ground and go together. Thank you.
Chris?
I think I would say I'm a good listener. I try to listen to all parties, and then I try to inject my values based on what I've heard. So I think I have a strong personality, been characterized as a type A personality. And I think as a selectman, you have to have a strong personality. It can't be personal. You're dealing with town issues. And so I think you have to separate your personal feelings from the issues of your town. And I think I do a good job at that. And I think it takes strong leadership. I think you have to listen, but at the same time, you've got to be willing to put your neck on the line sometimes, and say what maybe is the most unpopular thing in the room.
Okay, thank you. This is I have to so for Chris, it's how many hours a week do you devote to select board work, and then for Anita it will be how many hours will you commit if elected. So Chris, how many hours a week do you devote to select board work, would you say?
I was asked this the other day. On average, I think you spend about 10 hours. I spend about 10 hours a week outside of the meeting. You want to read through the agenda, you want to read through your action items, read through your discussion items, and then a lot of times you have to do research beyond that to understand those issues. And so it's usually about 10 hours a week. During the budget process, we obviously spend a lot longer and more time on it. But in general, I would say about 10 hours a week.
Okay. And Anita?
And so for me, in the beginning, am I muted? No.
Nope.
No. Okay. So for me, in the beginning, it will probably be a little longer because I have to come up to speed, right? So I have a lot of learning to do in the beginning. I'm willing to do, I don't think that I can be a valuable member of the board if I haven't done the work to be prepared for the meeting. So I can't guess an hour number at it because I've never done the job before. And I think it'll probably be a little bit more until I learn the routines of the select board.
Okay, thank you. Next question, starting with Anita. It is, what is the amount of the state aid reduction for fiscal year 2021, and was the new amount used to formulate the budget for fiscal year 2021? Secondly, the water admin fee, I'm not going to say that. Okay. So did you understand that?
Yes. So I don't think we know exactly what the state aid reduction is at this time. We're assuming a 10% reduction in the decisions that we're making, but I don't think we know for sure what that reduction is.
Okay. So Chris?
Andrew, just read the first part. I know you're not going to read the second part again.
Yeah, it is. What is the amount of the state aid reduction for fiscal year 2021, and was the new amount used to formulate the budget for fiscal year 2021? Yeah.
I think that's the $1 million question that we all wish we knew the answer to, but no, we don't know.
Okay.
We don't know what the state is going to cut Chapter 70 monies. We don't know what they're going to cut Chapter 90 monies. We certainly we we don't even know, and we're hopefully hedging on what our new growth revenue is going to be in town to help with our budgets. So I think a lot of it's in flux. Hopefully by August, I think is what we're hoping to have some more guidance from the state with regard to our Chapter 70 monies, which is probably the most important.
Okay, thank you. So Chris, we'll start with you for this one. Please provide at least 2 examples of how you have improved a business relationship with an individual or group from tenuous to strong.
Can you read it one more time?
Yeah, please provide at least 2 examples. I know it's tough, but 2 examples of how you have improved a business relationship with an individual or group from tenuous to strong. Or just improved.
Are they referring to in town?
It doesn't say. So I'd just say in general about business relationship, how have you improved? It's a tough question. Yeah.
I think it's an odd question.
Yeah.
I just I guess I'm uncomfortable because if it relates to town issues, a lot of those issues are we're not privy to talk about. I just think it's an odd question. I don't know if I'd be comfortable even answering it.
Okay. Fair enough. We'll give Anita a chance if you'd like.
So I thought of an old example, but I think a common example for me, and it's not just one family, so I think I can share it without violating the confidentiality, is sometimes you have a parent who is upset about the bus stop or where the bus is. And so that relationship is tenuous because they're upset with you and so the most important thing to do first is to listen so you fully understand what their needs are and what their questioning is. And then the next thing, I think, beyond listening, honor their request. So even if it's a request that we're not going to grant, I oftentimes will drive to the bus stop and stand there at the bus stop with the family and talk to them about why we're not going to make the change. And so I think by doing that, you're saying, I respect you so much that I'm willing to come to here to have this conversation. We're still not going to come to the solution that you want the solution to be, but I respect you as a person, and help them to understand your decision making. And so that's the only example that is short. I could give you long stories from listening is key. Listening and showing respect.
Thank you. Okay, Anita, we'll start with you. What do you specifically hope to accomplish that has not yet been addressed by the current board?
I think I'm an unusual candidate that I didn't put my hat in the ring with an agenda for the town. So I'm not running on I want this or I want that. I think that what I can bring is I think I can bring a positivity that I have a lot of passion for my town. So I think I can bring a positivity, and I think I can bring, I'm a unique problem solver. I'm a storyteller here, so you're gonna find that out, because in college, I was in University of Iowa. We had these big lecture halls, 250 people, and they said, put 6 dots in your notebook. This was before computers. I know that makes me old. And so we drew 6 dots like a domino, and then draw a picture. And I drew this lady in the circus, and she had a big polka dotted dress. And then she said, how many people added dots to their picture? And in the room of 250 people, I was the only one. We had to look at each other. I'm the only one who added dots. And they said, well, that was a divergent thinker. And so I have that ability to think outside the box. I see things that other people don't see sometimes. I ask questions that are unexpected. And sometimes that's a disadvantage, right? Sometimes everybody sees it and I'm so far outside the box, I miss it. So I have to ask a lot of questions. But most of the time, I'm able to see things from a point of view that other people don't see. So I think I bring an open heart, and I think I bring unique problem solving skills to the board, and definitely I'm passionate about my town. And so I think that positivity, civility, and passion will be an asset.
I think continued fiscal responsibility in town is paramount to select board. I think I'd like to see we have to work towards taking care of some of our capital items. We outlined over $50 million in capital expenditures. Probably one of the two most important is the fire station, whether it be a renovation or a rebuild that we promised that we have to tackle. Our roads are a continued source that we have to continue to work on. I know the schools are looking for expansion. So I think in the next 3 years, our focus is really going to have to be is how do we maintain and then improve our town, especially in light of the last couple of months in COVID. I think it's going to present a lot of challenges, but I think we have to, fiscal responsibility is really the focus on anything else you want to do. And then beyond that, we obviously have to take care of some of our capital needs, take care of our roads, and I hope to do that.
Thank you, Chris. Next question, and we'll start with Chris. Is increasing the business tax ratio the right area to be focusing on to solve tax burden issues? The Select Board has seen decisions made by other boards which have led to litigation, while being faced with the prospect of cutting 25% of the town's budget, particularly the schools. Can you justify the approval of money to defend litigation?
I think that sounded sort of like two-part. I think I think everybody understands. We don't have a sewer system in town. We don't have wastewater treatment systems in town. So to develop our center commercially is going to be extremely difficult. We don't have the infrastructure to do that. The area in town that we could develop is out on Route 1A. That is the area that we could have more commercial development. It's not happening though. And yet, as much as people don't appreciate development maybe on Noon Hill, they don't appreciate 40Bs, they're bringing in tax revenue. And that's important. We need that tax revenue. That is part of our growth numbers that makes up our total revenue for our budget. So I think you just commercial base in the town of Norfolk make a huge difference. Good examples are Plainville, which has the casino, has a number of commercial enterprises, and they're in a real budget conundrum right now. So I think we're fortunate to have the 40B that we're getting revenue from these that are going towards our tax base. And I don't see a commercial base in Norfolk ever taking hold. We just don't have the infrastructure to support it. And that infrastructure costs millions and millions of dollars. So I think we are really at a standstill where the commercial base we have is probably what we will have. It will increase maybe by a percentage or so in the next couple of years, but we really have to rely on our residential base in their community.
Thank you. Anita?
Could you repeat it, Andrew?
Yeah. Is increasing the business tax ratio the right area to be focusing on to solve tax burden issues? The Select Board has seen decisions made by other boards which have led to litigation. While being faced with the prospect of cutting 25% of the town's budget, can you justify the approval of money to defend litigation?
So those are two different questions, I think.
Yeah.
Completely. So in terms of the business base, I agree with Chris that it is challenging. I don't think that it's impossible. We do have businesses in our town who were able to get around those infrastructure problems, so it doesn't seem impossible, or we wouldn't have a gas station or a Dunkin' Donuts. So it is not impossible to have business there. Is it going to be a big part of our budget? Probably not, right? I think that where I understand completely the need for 40Bs in our town, and look forward to the time where we have that 10% of affordable housing, that we're not that we're able to feel a little bit more in control of those things. I feel like we have to be careful of saying we build a house and we get revenue, because even if they have one child, a child to educate in our town costs, I don't know the number, but it's like $16,000, and so that's not a revenue for the town. That's a cost. And so if we're building housing with children, we have to be careful of thinking that as straight revenue. And so I don't know if I answered that. I think I did. And litigation. Oh, there was a part about litigation. I think we should do our best not to have litigation and hopefully work collaboratively with people and avoid those kinds of litigious expenses that don't bring any benefit to the town.
Okay, thank you. So next question, we'll start with you, Anita. The local schools have been studying enrollment projections for a number of years, and objective data indicates the schools will be out of room sooner rather than later. The school district has submitted a letter of interest to MSBA for a possible partial grant to fund a school expansion project.
At this current time, cannot afford, whether it be 50% funding or not, to put on a $20 million addition. It would require an override. And as people have said, our tax rate is high right now. So then to go and put that burden on the taxpayer on top of the current rates, I don't think people want to approve it. We promised a fire station, we don't deliver it. Say that we're going to now allocate monies to a school. The taxpayers will not accept it. And it'd be great to have it, but I just think at this time, we're gonna have to think outside the box, as Anita said earlier. We're gonna have to find ways to make it work. And I don't think it's even a conversation we can have until we understand what the new normal is gonna be in our schools.
All right, thank you. Next question, so we'll start with Chris. The town has created a capital improvement such as renovations to the fire station, improvements to roads, a possible expansion of school buildings, as we said. What capital improvements do you feel the town should focus on, and how do you prioritize those items? Chris.
I think, and I've said it, our firefighters are living in a trailer behind our old police and fire station. When we approved the police station, the MEC Center, we promised the fire station, at a minimum, a renovation. Fire safety, our paramedics, our ambulances, this is part of the core of our community. Everybody relies on them. When we talk about level of service, we rely on our fire department. So I think first and foremost, we owe them what we promised them, which is a fire department and a fire station and housing for our firefighters. Our roads, I wouldn't make as a second priority. I think our roads are a continual priority. There was a period of time when we couldn't afford to spend money on our roads. This last year and last fall, the budget, we used free cash to allocate money so we could pay 5 of our roads in a phase 1. It certainly isn't enough. After we get done with the phase 1 paving, there's still an enormous amount of roads in town that are in deplorable condition, that aren't even part of the phase 1. So I think we have to take care of that. I think these should be our 2 top priorities. I don't think we can even discuss the school expansion until we understand what's going to happen due to the pandemic. But I think those are the 3 largest items in our budget or in our wish list of capital items.
Thank you. Anita?
So I am intimate with the space needs of our schools, and things might look different in a pandemic, but they're not going to look different in a way that we need less space rather than more. If anything, we're going to need more space between our students and more room to keep them safe. And so I'm intimate with that the needs of the schools. I am not completely familiar with I've driven on our roads certainly, but I'm not familiar with the background about the fire station and the roads. So I would feel uncomfortable to make a prioritized decision until I've done my research and understood the needs and the promises. I wouldn't want to speak and say, well, just this, because this is what I know. I'd want to do my research before I made that decision.
Thank you. All right, next question. Starting with Anita. The select board occasionally has to meet on weekday mornings or afternoons, and occasionally select board members have to get to the town hall during the workday to sign documents. Does your schedule and work obligations allow you to go to town hall to attend weekday morning and afternoon meetings on the occasions when they are required?
So I'm not sure. I'll be starting a new job. And so as an administrator, there are usually some, certainly would be different if I was a classroom teacher, the answer would be no. But as an administrator, there are probably some flexibilities in that, but I can't promise that because I'm starting a new job and I don't know the expectations of that job at this time.
All right, thank you. I'd just like to apologize for any audio issues that may have been heard there, to anyone watching. So sorry about that. All right, and Chris?
Yeah, the board does require meetings sometimes in the morning, going and signing warrants, and having obviously special select board meetings. I'm fortunate enough that I work in town, so it's I'm flexible enough, and my schedule is flexible enough that I can actually get up to town hall during most times. So I am fortunate in that respect.
Okay. Chris, we'll start with you for this one. It's what makes Norfolk a town you are proud to serve, and how will you continue to build upon this?
Norfolk's a great town. It you know, I always tell people the best time for me is in an early morning, walk up to the center of town, look at our town hill, look at the way it's set up, look at how the library sits on the plateau there. It's a nice town. The people here are nice. We have a nice community. We have a lot of people who have volunteered. I mean, you know, it's good to see obviously new people wanting to get involved. I think Jim would agree. The old guard, we're getting older, and we put a lot of years in to building up this community, and it's good to see new faces getting involved. But I think it's a great community. I moved here. I grew up in Dover, and you know, you knew everybody's name, you knew all your neighbors, you knew the store owners, and I feel Norfolk the same way. I know the owners of Dunkin' Donuts. I know the owner of the Food Mart. I know the owner of the dry cleaner. I know the owner of the pizza place. I know the owner of the gas station. I knew their father. It's a great community. I think obviously the protest last week showed how the community gets together, and they've gotten together at other times when needed. So I think it's a community that does get together. They do bond together when necessary. And I think it's incumbent on everybody, not just the select board, to make it a better community. We need more people getting involved in committees. We need to hear more voices and different voices from different areas of town as to what they want to see, as opposed to the same group always talking. So I think the town grows and improves by everybody getting involved. And, you know, forums like this help in that. But I think we have a great community, and I think building upon it really is just everybody continually getting involved, participating in select board meetings, participating in the planning process, and that's what makes it a great community.
Thank you. Anita?
So my first attraction to Norfolk was, I told my husband, I said, this is a town that cares, like the cute police station and the beautiful library and the school. And then as you get to know the people in the town, I like I'm so impressed with the way people treat each other and the kindness in our town. I love our town meetings. I love how everybody has an opportunity to talk and say what they think and how we solve problems together as a community. We don't always agree, but we listen to each other. We sit in that room until, well, really late, and then sometimes come back the next day. But I like how we solve problems as a town and come together and do that. And so, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that the schools are a big part of, they're the heartbeat of our, well, maybe the library's the heartbeat. I don't know. The schools and the library together are the heartbeat of our town that hold us together. And you could see today at the HOD parade as our second graders drove by, the kids are waving, the parents are crying, the parents are sad to leave their school. They really were crying. And so it's at those community events, at the soccer games and at the band concerts and at the second grade parade where we come together as a town, where you feel and you know that this is a really special place.
Thank you. We're down to 10 minutes left here, so we're going to start. Well, I'll ask this question to you first, Anita. What qualities are most important to have for this position on the select board?
Qualities plural. I can have plural.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, good. No, I think you need an open mind. I think you need to be able to listen. I think you need a sense of humor. I think you need to have a passion for the community. I think you need to have a willingness to do the work, and I want to go back to like the open mind and an ability to look at a problem, an ability to solve problems or ask questions that get to the root of the problem.
Chris?
I agree with Anita. You have to have an open mind. You got to be able to listen. You got to be willing and have the time to participate. Hopefully a good business background helps. Ability to work with different groups of people. All those skills. I think we touched on it earlier. There's a number of different skills that everybody brings to the table. The board is made up of, like, as I said, you've got 20 years difference in ages, 3 people from different backgrounds. So I think it helps to have different backgrounds. And I think you just have to be able to listen, have good business acumen, understand your town, and understand the passions of your people in your town.
Okay. Starting with you, Chris, should town employees belong to unions that dictate salary increases to the town?
Should town employees, I guess, are they saying town employees versus school employees, or aren't they distinguishing?
It was not distinguished in the question, but answer it, I guess, however.
Yeah, and can you repeat the question then again?
Should town employees belong to unions that dictate to the town salary increases?
Well, I don't think unions dictate to the town salary increases. I think they negotiate them, and certainly I am not against anybody having the right to unionize. So I think the employees are allowed to be a member of a union, and I think the unions have to just have a cooperative relationship with the town, the select board, town administrator, to negotiate good salary increases over the years.
Anita?
I also have no objection. I believe unions built this country and turned it. One of my, Amelia had to read The Jungle way back when, and you talk about how terrible things were, and it was unions that lifted us out of that. And so I believe in unions, and I agree with Chris that they do not dictate the anything to the town. They partner with in their department to make decisions. So that's inside of the budget, not separate to the town.
Okay, thank you. So let's see. Starting with you, Anita, what is the most significant issue you see this town facing, and how will you address it?
Wow, that's a big question. The most significant. I don't know. If I was a better politician, I could dance around that a little bit. So clearly, I think that there is a strife in the town about how we spend our money or what we have to do with our money. But I feel like that's an easy answer to say. Like, we need more money, right? But I think when you stood on Town Hill, you think there's a bigger problem where we have to come together as a community and be humans together. I think that's the biggest issue facing all of us right now. And so I would hate to say, I don't know, we need to figure out our financial situation. We need to spend our money wisely, and we need to take care of our departments. But we also need to be sure that we're growing as humans so that we're not stuck in a place that is not where we want to be.
Chris?
I think the biggest issue, hopefully the question was written post-COVID, is COVID-19. I think that's the biggest issue facing our town. It affects our budget. It affects our people, our elderly, our students, our graduates. I mean, we just had a graduation, and with no graduation, no parties, no senior nights. So I think COVID is the biggest thing facing our community. How are we going to respond to it health-wise for all our residents? And then financially, how are we going to be able to respond to it with regard to our schools, with regard to our town government, with regard to everything in our lives. So I think this is the number one priority. After COVID, it is a continuation. I think we're getting there. And I think the budget process is part of that, is people understanding how our money is spent, where it goes, and how can we balance that with the revenues we take in. But I think COVID will really dictate our community for the next couple of years, as it should, so that we make sure we take care of the elderly, we take care of the young, we're able to keep our libraries, our schools, our town offices open, and keep our people safe.
All right, thank you. All right, this will be the last question of the night, and it'll be kind of a nice wrap up, and it's just a nice basic. Why should residents cast their vote for you? Chris, you can start.
Hopefully, after listening tonight, they'll realize I am passionate about the town of Norfolk, passionate about our future, and I think I bring a good financial background to our town. I think I've shown over the last year that I can work with the board and that we've moved forward as a community. And I would like to continue that. I think those skills, as well as the achievements we've made this year, will make me an even better select person over the next 3 years.
Okay, thank you. And Anita?
I think I bring new eyes to the select board, and I bring some integrity and civility in the way that I handle my problems and solve problems, and an open mind, but new eyes.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, who joined us tonight at home. And thank you to all the candidates that are on the call right now. But that concludes the night. Thank you for watching. The election, town, I believe, is June 24th. The polls will be open 10 a.m. to 5 a.m. this year, and it is still at the Freeman Kennedy School. There's also, you can go to the town website, download an early voting by mail application, and they will help you out. But yes. June 23rd, excuse me, sorry. Town meeting is 24th. That's what it was. And so come to that too. But yeah, so June 23rd, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Polls are open at the Freeman Kennedy School. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thank you and good night.